Good morning, guys. We're back and we're here today with mastering formal multiplication. If you're not entirely sure or remember what that means, it's basically where you're multiplying two or more factors, perhaps, using a system set up like this one up here in the corner, where you've got everything lined up nice and neatly, and you can go back and see what steps you've taken to reach the answer that you've got, and that might be the wrong answer, and that will enable you to go and see where you went wrong, or perhaps even explain to somebody else how you've reached that answer. Okay, so all you need to do is obviously a piece of paper, pencil, your brains, your big fat juicy brains, and perhaps if you struggle with your multiplication tables, then go ahead and find one of these online. They're really easy. Just type in multiplication grid, and this will help you with perhaps the bigger numbers or the ones that you're not so sure with later on. Okay, moving on. This is the kind of vocabulary that obviously you're going to hear throughout the presentation, and that you should feel pretty confident with by now, especially with factors and multiples. We hopefully remember that factors are numbers that fit perfectly when divided into other numbers, and basically create what are called multiples. Two or more factors, when multiplied together, create multiples. And funnily enough, another fancy word for a multiple is a product. It's the answer you get from multiplying two or more factors to each other. And you can find factors in a multiplication table. We might remember or recognize that as being the same as what we call our times tables, but we're getting a bit older now, guys. We want to move on from saying times tables, so let's try and implement the words multiplication table. And another way to look at a multiplication table is like a sequence, which is just a fancy word for a pattern, really. When you're going up in twos, threes, fives, whatever, you're going up in a pattern, and that pattern can be called a sequence. Okay, so keep your ears out for that kind of vocabulary and see if you can use it whenever you explain it to a family or a friend. So two types of multiplication we're going to be re-exploring, because we have done these before, so you should recognize these. We have short multiplication, where you multiply any number, like 123 for example, and you multiply it by a single digit number. Okay, that's a number with just one digit on its own. That makes it a short multiplication. However, we're also going to be looking at long multiplication, which we hopefully remember is where you multiply that any given number by another number which has more than one digit in it. It could have two digits, three digits, whatever. It makes it long multiplication when it's one of the numbers has more than one digit. Alright, so let's kick it off with short multiplication. Let's remember that using formal multiplication methods means that you need to line up the digits in the right columns. We need to remember that in 123, each of these digits belong to different place value columns. That means that they're actually worth more than they appear when they're on their own. So yes, the 3 is in the ones column. That means it's only worth 3. However, the digit of 2 is in the tens column, so that actually is worth two sets of 10, making 20, not just 2. And obviously, being in the hundreds column, that means that we have one set of 100 in this column here. And what we're going to do in multiplication is allow these guys up here on the top to take turns to be multiplied by our single digit number at the bottom here, in this case 4. So where do we start? We should always remember that we start in the top right corner. We start with the ones. We do 3 multiplied by 4, we get an answer of 12, but we don't put both of those digits from 12 in the same spot. Oh no, we just put the lowest value one. We put the 2 in here. Alright, and we have to what's called regroup the 1, in other words, carry it on for later. We move it up to the tens column, put it underneath this line here. It's really important to have this line, guys, and that you've drawn it with a ruler, because it separates us from the answer and avoids any confusion later on down the line. So place the 2 in there, regroup the 1, done. First step completed. Well done. Alright, now we move on to the tens. We multiply that 2 by 4. Remember, it's actually technically a 20 times 4, but We've followed all the previous steps, so there's not going to be any confusion. We can think of it as 2 times 4 and figure out that the answer would be 8. However, we can't forget this little guy down here. We can't forget that that 1 needs to be used. We can't just ignore him. We've got to add it to the 8. We've got to use it. So 8 add 1 obviously will give us 9, giving us an answer so far. But we still have another step to take. It's with the hundreds. Technically 100 times 4. 1 times 4, if we think about it in this way, is 4, giving us an answer of 492. In fact, a product of 492. Alright? Probably worth crossing out that 1 just to acknowledge that you've used it. Alright? So, there we go. Short multiplication, done. All the steps followed correctly, giving us a correct answer. Let's move on then to long multiplication. Why is it called long multiplication? Because there's a couple more steps than there are in short multiplication, but there are some very, very similar steps in this one too. For instance, we need to remember that we've got to begin by making sure that all of our digits are lined up correctly in the correct place value column. So we've got our 3 and 5 in the ones column, and we've got our 2 and 2 from 123 and 25 in the tens column, and then just the 1 in the hundreds column, because we're only multiplying 123 by 25. And what I've done here is added an extra line, but you'll see why soon, have no fear. So what do? We start on the far right. We start with our 1, same as before in short multiplication. We do 3 times 5. We know it's 15, but we can't put both digits in there. No. We only put the 5 in, and we regroup the 1 for later, just like we did in short multiplication. Then we do 2 times 5. Remember, we have to multiply each of these digits by this 5 first. We're not looking at the 2 for the moment. We're just multiplying 123 by 5, working our way through each step slowly and carefully so that we don't make any mistakes. 2 multiplied by 5 gives us 10, but we need to use that 1 that we had down there before. In other words, we've got to add it. 10 add 1 is 11. Again, we can only use one of those digits in this column, so we place the 1 here and regroup the other to the next column underneath the dotted line there. Next step, obviously, we multiply 1 by 5 next, okay? Which should give us a product of 5, but again, we had a 1 that we'd regrouped underneath, so we've got to use it. In other words, we've got to add it, and 5 add 1 will give us 6. Nice and easy so far. If you get lost at any point, guys, don't panic. You can always just flip back through the video to the point where you start to get confused. Rewatch it twice, 3 times, however many times it takes for you to understand, okay? And you can always reach out to me to ask questions. So, are we done here? No, we're not, because all we've done is multiply 123 by 5. We've still got this 2 to use over here. Yeah, we've got to multiply each of these digits by 2 next. In fact, it's not exactly a 2, is it? Because it's in the tens column. It's worth 2 sets of 10, making it valued of 20. So we're done with the 5 now. We've got our product from multiplying each of these digits by 5, 615. We now need to find a new product by multiplying 123 by 2. In realistic cases, 20. And because it's 20 and not 2, that means that the answer is 10 times bigger than it would be if we were multiplying each of these digits by 2. Which means we've got to put what's called a placeholder right here. We're going to put our next product underneath the first one. But first we need to do a really, really important step. We need to put a 0 here, because our answer is going to be 10 times bigger than it would be if we were multiplying 123 by 2. We've got to make sure that our answer is already lined up to be 10 times bigger. In other words, plonk that 0 right there, and it will help you out later on, and you'll see. So, where do we start? As always, we start with the 1s. We multiply 3 by 2, well, technically 20. 3 times 2, however, is 6, and we plonk that 6 right here in our tens column, which makes sense so far, doesn't it? Because 3 times 20 would be 60, so we're on a roll so far. Hopefully you spotted that. Next up, we do the tens, okay? 2 times 2 gives us 4, which means we place that 4 in the next available column, giving us an answer of 460 so far. And finally, we've got 1 times 2, which we know is 2. Okay, and the product we get is 2,460. That is the answer from multiplying 123 by 20. Okay, and you think, God, surely we're finished there. No, we're not. It's called long multiplication for a reason, guys. There's one last step left, because all we have so far are 2 different products. This is 123 times 5, which gives us 615, and then we've got 123 times 20, which is 2,460. That doesn't actually tell us what 123 times 25 is yet. We need a single answer. So what are we going to have to do? We've got the product of 2 different equations here. We're going to have to add them together, which is nice and easy, because they're perfectly lined up in their columns. So we can use what's called column addition. We start again with the 1s. Always start with the 1s, but we're adding this time. 5 add 0 is 5. 1 add 6 is 7. 6 add 4 is 10. Remember, we can't put both those digits in that place for the value column. We only put the 0 in for the moment, and we regroup the 1. We carry it over so that we can add it to that 2 later on, and giving us a total of 3,075. In other words, we've also found the product of 123 times 25. We've split it up, the 20 and the 5, found the product of each equation, and finally found the answer by adding them together. In other words, we snailed it, which has made this presentation all the more better. Alright? Again, you get lost at any point through that, don't worry, just go back and re-watch the clip from where you got a bit lost. However, if you're feeling confident with that, I'd like you to try these out now, okay? Freeze the video, copy these out onto a piece of paper, try and work them out using formal multiplication, and send me your answers. Let me know how well you did. Or if you are really struggling, let me know where you're lost, and I can help you out through those stages. Also, if you go on the school website, you'll find a new upload with some destination questions for you guys to try out. Guys, hope you're staying safe. Hope you have an amazing Easter as well. I hope I get to see you soon. Alright then. Bye now. Thank you.